Oh my god, like how many times are we gonna do this? Like somebody has to get whipped, okay? Somebody has to get whipped. Hello and welcome to Galilea Books. You can call me Mary. Today we are going to be talking about the Dark Artifices Series by Cassandra Clare. So this is going to be a review and a discussion, and it's going to be spoiler filled. Probably not only all of the books in the series, but also other books in the Shadowhunter Chronicles. So if you have not read every single book, with the exception of The Eldest Curses, because I haven't read that series, but if you have not read at least The Mortal Instruments and probably The Infernal Devices, don't watch this unless you want to be spoiled. My thoughts are going to be very chaotic. If you are looking for like a cohesive like wrap up of plot summary of what happened, this is not that video. Listen, plot goes in one ear out the other for me. I mostly read for the characters and the relationships and the writing and just the little moments that happen. It's just going to be some chaotic commentary, and I'm just gonna elaborate on it and we're gonna discuss it. First we can just I'll give like a short little non-spoilery section just talking about how I felt about the series overall. So a little bit of background. I was really into The Mortal Instruments back in the day, back when I was in like high school. It was in its heyday. Was really obsessed with it, and also The Infernal Devices, and then I just kind of like fell out of touch with it for a few years, and I got into a phase where I was like, I'm too adult for that, like it's too cringy, like those days are behind me now. And I like stayed like that for a while. And then recently I was like, you know what? Maybe I should give it another chance, because I did really like it. It's not like I didn't enjoy the books when I read them back in the day. It's just that after some time had passed, I look back on those days with a sort of level of cringe of like, ugh, I can't believe I was into that. Specifically with The Mortal Instruments, because I think that's definitely the cringiest of the series. No offense to any TMI stans, but there's some questionable, if you know, you know. There's some questionable things in that series that it's just like, oh, God, okay, I guess. So, anyway, recently I was like, you know what, I don't give a fuck, I'm gonna try it out. And so then I actually started with the Last Hour series, and I read those first two books, the ones that are out, Chain of Gold, Chain of Iron. And then that just spiraled me into this obsession, and then I read the Dark Artifices. I had already read Lady Midnight once before, I think, when it first came out, but it was like years ago, so I didn't remember it. So then I just reread that and read the whole series. And now I'm so deep into this this lore and this world once again. It's now my hyperfixation. I'm just, all I want to think about is Shadowhunter Chronicles and all of the lore and everything. I've gotten into the short story collections. I haven't finished them, but I've read some of them. So that's the background that I have coming into this. So my thoughts on the Dark Artifices as a whole, I think it might be, if I'm rating it with like the other series that I've read, and keep in mind I have not read The Eldest Curses, but out of TMI, TID, TLH, and TDA, there's so many fucking acronyms, Jesus Christ, out of the four that I've read, and TLH is not finished yet, so keep that in mind also. I think it's been a long time since I've read The Infernal Devices, so I don't know if I like it more than The Infernal Devices. I know I was obsessed with The Infernal Devices. I know everyone is obsessed with The Infernal Devices because The Infernal Devices are fucking good. If you haven't read any of the Shadowhunter Chronicles books, I would actually recommend starting with The Infernal Devices. I know that's a controversial opinion. A lot of people say to start or to read them in publication order, but the thing is, I feel like if people do that, they're going to read City of Bones and they're not going to want to continue. And I don't blame them, because City of Bones kind of sucks. So I would say start with The Infernal Devices so that you at least have the motivation to keep going. But anyway, I'm gonna say I liked the Dark Artifices probably second to The Infernal Devices, if my memory serves correctly. Like I said, it's been a long time since I've read The Infernal Devices. I should probably reread them, but from what I remember, I think I liked the Infernal Devices more, possibly, than the Dark Artifices, but I did really, really enjoy the Dark Artifices, and I think I like the Dark Artifices better than the Last Hours, at least what we've had of the Last Hours so far. So I think my ranking goes TID, the Infernal Devices, the Dark Artifices, the Last Hours, the Mortal Instruments, and the Eldest Curses I have not read yet. The short story novella collections, I haven't read all of them. I've read most of Ghost of the Shadow Market. Some of the... I skimmed, not gonna lie. I skimmed some of the Shadowhunter Academy ones, and then I read like one or two of the Bane Chronicles. So, I still have some catching up to do, but that's my ranking so far. Other non-spoilery thoughts. I think it's a good series. I think if you have not gone into the Shadowhunter Chronicles, you should not start with this series because it's just like, it's a lot and you would be spoiled for like everything else and probably wouldn't understand what was happening and you wouldn't have the same like connections to the characters. So like I said, I would recommend starting with the Infernal Devices, then the Mortal Instruments, then you can, you know, read some of the like side stories, novellas, whatever, then the Dark Artifices, and then the Last Hours read whenever you want. But that's how I would recommend getting into the series. But if you have read all of the other series and you're just starting the Dark Artifices, I would say it's very good. It's definitely better, in my opinion, than the Mortal Instruments. And it's a wild ride, I will say. It's a wild ride. So be prepared for that. Be prepared for there to be a roller coaster of emotions and possibly some plot points that will make you want to scream, because there were quite a few of those, which is why it's not like perfect level tier. Like that's probably why I think TID is my favorite, because there were some plot points that just frustrated me with the Dark Artifices that I don't know still if I am okay with or not. Like I'm still kind of sitting on it and deciding whether or not I agree with the literary decisions that were made, specifically with Queen of Air and Darkness. But we'll get into that. I do think it was pretty well done, and the characters, if you need a reason to start reading any of these books, the Shadowhunter Chronicles, the characters are unlike any other characters I've ever read. They have so much depth. Their relationships are so interesting and complex. There's so much richness, so much flavor in the characters themselves, and that's definitely the pro, I would say, of any of Cassie Clare's books. So that's really all I have to say as far as non-spoilery. Again, like I said, I'm not even trying to give like a plot summary. I don't even know how I would give like a synopsis without spoiling. Like, Los Angeles, bad shit happens, people have to save the day. Like, it's the same blueprint as all of the other ones, except this one there's a bit of a forbidden love, which we've seen before, but not quite in the same way. And we get to explore a lot of really interesting family dynamics. I will say that. It's definitely a family-heavy book, which I really liked. I think that's probably why I liked it so much, because I love exploring relationships that are more than just romantic. I like exploring different and complex family dynamics, and I think that this book does that really well, and it really has a lot of emphasis on families. So if that's your thing, I would definitely recommend this book. The vibes of this book, of this series, I should say, one thing I did really like about the vibes is that each book is based on an Edgar Allan Poe poem, which is really cool. Like, the chapter titles each have they're like a line from the poems. So the first one is based on Annabelle Lee, which is like one of my favorite poems of all time. Like, it's so iconic. So if you like Edgar Allan Poe, that's definitely part of the vibe of this series. So it's kind of dark, kind of like mysterious, kind of eerie, but also kind of like dreamy and kind of like whimsy, but like that with that darkness, you know what I mean? So if that's your thing, you probably like this series. Now, I feel like I've given enough non-spoiler parts, so we're moving straight in. So you have been warned. Don't come for me if I spoil it for you, because I just warned you. I will say I have like 2 notes for Lady Midnight, and then like a few for Lord of Shadows, and then like a whole page for Queen of Air and Darkness. So for Lady Midnight, I really didn't have that much thoughts. This was a reread for me. Like I said, I read this back in the day. Didn't really remember that much. The first note that I wrote about the sex on the beach scene, and I wrote, this girl needs some water. Because this was bothering me so much. She literally just drowned, right? Like, she was drowning. I don't even remember how they got to that point. She went out to like the Convergence site on her own for some reason, and then she like got sucked into the ocean, and then Julian starts like choking water because of their parabatai bond, which is fucking crazy and not supposed to be like that. So he's like choking water, so he goes out to save her. First of all, how did he like know exactly where she was? I guess the bond like kind of like guided him to her. I don't know. How did she even end up on the beach? Like, she could have been just like lost in the fucking ocean. I don't know. Anyway, somehow he rescues her. She's literally like choking up water, right? Seconds after she's choking up water after having nearly drowned, Julian is making out with her, and now they're fucking. Now they're fucking on the beach. I'm like, girl, you have to be thirsty. Like, this girl is dehydrated as fuck. I was so concerned. I was like, please give her some water. Maybe the healing rune that he put on her like makes her hydrated. I don't know. I was really concerned about that. I was like, how are you almost like literally almost dying? Like, you just choked on like seawater, and you're just gonna immediately fuck, not even drink any water, not a Gatorade, nothing. Like, I'm just a little bit concerned for you, girl. So that was the first note that I wrote, because everything up until that point I just had no thoughts about, I guess, or I didn't feel like writing them down. I will say, a pro of this series for me, I really like reading about the Blackthorn family, and I really like Julian. I know it's a bit of a controversial opinion. I feel like a lot of people that I've seen talk about this book hate Julian. I don't understand why. Like, I don't agree with all of his decisions, but I do love him. Like, I don't know. Like, he's one of those characters that is just gonna, like, stay with me for a really long time, okay? And there's something about really intense family relationships that just, like, drive me insane. And the fact that Julian, first of all, had to, like, kill his own father in the Dark War to save his siblings when he was 12 years old, and then he had to raise his siblings by himself when he was 12 fucking years old, and he had to run the institute by himself when he was 12 years old. Like, it makes me insane, and I have so much respect for him as a character, even though I don't agree with all of his decisions down the line, and we'll get to those. Even though he frustrates the shit out of me sometimes, even though he is a dramatic ass bitch, Julian is so dramatic sometimes. It makes me laugh, because he will just, like, really do the most when he didn't need to do that much, you know? Again, we'll get there when we talk about Queen of Air and Darkness, but he really does the most in situations where maybe you could have just done a little, but, like, you really had to go there, you know? But I'm kind of obsessed with him. I'm obsessed with his character. I'm obsessed with how much he cares about his family. I just think it's so interesting and fun to read about. So, Julian, probably one of my favorite characters from this series, just because I just think that there's so much depth to him and so much interesting things going on internally there. A lot of my notes, I'm pretty sure, just say, like, everyone needs therapy in these fucking books, especially Julian, okay? But, oh yeah, okay, we gotta talk about the whipping scene. That was the only other, like, note that I wrote. I said, everybody's trying to get whipped here, because literally this scene was also kind of unnecessarily dramatic, because we have Mark, which I also really liked Mark in this book. But we have Mark. How did this happen? I don't know. Mark somehow betrayed one of the fairy secrets to Christina, and Kieran was fucking spying on them for some reason, because he's a fucking nosy ass bitch and a snitch. Okay, Kieran kind of pissed me off in this book a little bit. He grows on me. I do like him, although I have some qualms with the fact that we never got a Kieran POV in Queen of Air and Darkness, when we were like reading about him a lot, but it was always from someone else's point of view, and it really annoyed me. But anyway, I do like Kieran now, but in the beginning I was like, I don't know, you're acting kind of immature and you're fucking shit up for everyone. Case in point, he snitches to Gwyn, the hunter, and now Mark has to face this punishment and get whipped, which, first of all, let me just say, I have another point that I liked about this book. I really liked Mark's arc in this book, because when he first shows up, he's like very fragile and like kind of like barely hanging on to his sanity, and I really liked that. I liked how in the beginning there was that he gets that little note, which we find out later was from Kieran, that says, remember that none of this is real. Ooh, that shit messed me up, because we find out that he was like tortured when he was in the Wild Hunt, and like would see visions of his family like being brutally murdered, which is fucking awful. And so then to have his family in front of him, he thinks that it's not real, like he thinks that it's some kind of vision and they're gonna be taken away from him, like that. Oh, that messed me up so bad. I was like, oh my god, that's like so heartbreaking. Like, he finally gets his family back, but he can't even like accept it, because he thinks that it's a vision that's gonna like crumble before his eyes, or he's gonna like lose them, or he doesn't like believe that it's real. It's like so disorienting, and that was like, I really liked that aspect of the book, but it really made me uncomfortable, and like just like made me like yeah made me feel a lot for Mark. And then we find out that he had Shadowhunter runes like carved into him as like a form of punishment. Like, god, he like went through some shit. So I understand when it was time for him to get whipped, everyone was like, oh hell no, because Mark had gotten to this point where he's like, oh, pretty okay, right? And then all of a sudden he has to get whipped, and everyone's like, no, like he was in such a fragile state, we don't want to send him back there. But tell me why we have to have 3 different people cycling through this. No, whip me instead. No, whip me instead. No, whip me instead. It's like, Jesus, I get it. Everyone's trying to get whipped. Like, I get it. Y'all are into some kinky shit, but like, can we just choose someone? Like, just someone fucking do it? Because we originally have, I think Kieran says that he'll do it instead, and then they're like, no, you can't. And then Julian's like, I'll do it instead. And then Julian does get a few lashes, and then Emma is like, no, take me instead. It's like, oh my god, like, how many times are we gonna do this? Like, somebody has to get whipped, okay? Somebody has to get whipped. Like, we gotta get this over with. Anyway, eventually Emma takes it. Badass Emma. Love Emma. We get through it. But I just feel like that scene was a little bit unnecessarily dramatic. I really liked kind of like the arc of the first book. I feel like it was very well contained. Like it had a very clear arc, beginning, middle, end. Like, really felt like a story, you know. And I really feel like the Annabelle Lee poem kind of threaded into that really nicely. And I feel like I liked the villain. I liked the reveal of Malcolm as the villain. I think it was very well done. So the first book, I would give probably like 4, maybe 4.5 out of 5 stars. I wouldn't give it a total 5 just because I feel like we don't know the characters well enough for me to be like super obsessed with them at this point. I'm just kind of like, you know, we're just dipping our toes in. So the stakes aren't quite that high, and we're not like that like obsessed with everyone yet, so. And also the angst. Well, the angst is high in all of the books, so never mind. I was gonna say like the love angst, but I actually feel like the first book is kind of tame because they don't find out about the Parabatai curse until the end. But the ending in the first book is also frustrating because then Emma has to fucking be like, now I have to make you not love me. Like, she pulls a fucking Will Herondale. It's like, we've been through this. We know this shit doesn't work. But okay, do the same shit. Whatever. Moving on to Lord of Shadows. Now, I have to say, I'm just gonna say it. I'm gonna say it with my whole chest. Lord of Shadows is the best book in the Dark Artifices. Fight me on this. Lord of Shadows was really that bitch for me. I would give Lord of Shadows a 5 out of 5 stars. I was so impressed with Lord of Shadows. I was scared to read Lord of Shadows because, spoiler for the third book and this next thing I'm about to say, I knew Thule was coming. I was spoiled for Thule, okay? And Thule, I don't know how you say it. Is it Thule? Is it Thule? I don't know. In the Edgar Allan Poe poem that it was based on, I think it's supposed to be Thule, but the audiobook said Thule, so I don't know. Anyway, I was spoiled for fucking Thule, and I hated Thule before before we were even introduced to Thule in the books. I already hated it. I already had a vendetta against Thule, and we'll get more into my vendetta against Thule, believe me. But I already had a vendetta against Thule, and I didn't know when Thule was coming. I thought it might come in Lord of Shadows. So I was really scared to read Lord of Shadows, because I was like, I don't want to see Thule. I don't want to go there. I don't want to deal with that. So I was really convinced that shit was going to happen. I was convinced that we were going to have just like some really annoying shit happen. Like, I was expecting Julian to like get possessed or like go totally evil or something in the second book, which he doesn't do in this book. A little bit more towards that end in the third book, but in the second book we have him like kind of tiptoeing darker and darker, but it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, honestly. And the pacing of the second book, I think, is what really outdid it for me. Like, the second book was like boom, 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 boom. Like, she really delivered. The point of view sections in the second book were very short, which I really liked. And usually my issue with like multiple point of view books is that I get frustrated whenever we're in a character's point of view that I really like, and then we have to leave and go to another point of view, and I'm like, hello? Like, I wasn't done. Like, we need to go back to that character's point of view. And so I'm really terrible, and I like to like skip ahead and like see what's gonna happen. Like, I spoil myself a little bit when I read. So I'll like skip ahead to like, when's the next time we see this character's point of view, just to like see what's gonna happen, take a little sneak peek. And I do that whenever we have point of views where it's like there's one that I really like and then one that I really hate, or one that I'm really bored with. But with Lord of Shadows, I didn't do that very much at all, because every point of view we got was interesting, and there was shit happening that I wanted to be a part of and see what the fuck was going on. We had a lot of different plot lines going on, a lot of different locations. We were in London, we were in Ferry, we were in Los Angeles, but the place where they were with the cottage, they were there, they were at the London Institute, they were all over the place, right? And I liked that because, again, it was like kind of fast paced. I got to go to Ferry, which was cool. I liked the vibes of Ferry, and it was just kind of like boom, 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 boom. And I think another reason why I love The Lord of Shadows is because I am obsessed. I'm obsessed with Kit Harington. He's my new favorite character. I think probably in the whole Shadowhunter Chronicles right now. Like, this could change potentially. It could fluctuate, but right now, he is what I have decided I want to be my favorite character. I'm obsessed with him, and I'm obsessed with his relationship with Ty that was beginning in this book. And it was so good to see like Ty like sleeping outside his door, and like it was just so good. Like, the chemistry was building, and every time we had a Kit point of view, I was just like, yes! I was just so excited. I was just eating it up. So that's really what I loved about Lord of Shadows in a nutshell. I think that the frustrating part of Lord of Shadows was whenever Emma and Julian were like, oh, no. Their whole fucking dynamic. And like the first half-ish of the book, whenever Emma's trying to make Julian think that he doesn't love her, and she sees him kissing some random ass fairy, and it's like, bitch, you think he's gonna kiss some random ass fairy he doesn't know? Like, this is Julian. He doesn't just kiss random ass fucking people. Like, you're in fairy, you're on a mission, you think he's just gonna find some random fairy bitch and make out with her passionately? Hello? Like, it didn't make any sense. So their whole, like, miscommunication, like, oh no, they don't love me thing, that was frustrating as fuck. But once we had that truth come out of like, oh no, I actually do love you, and oh, I love you, and you know, in that cottage, the cottage scene, it was like, okay, thank God. Can we just be honest with each other? I hate this lying shit so much. Pet peeve in every single fucking Cassie Clare book. There has to be some kind of miscommunication dynamic, and it just gets old. Like, I just wish we could move past it. Luckily, I feel like we didn't stay too long in it. We could have stayed longer, so I'm glad that we got a good chunk of the book with them being totally honest with each other. So that was good. But my only downside to the book is how long it took to get there. Okay, I love how he makes fun of the Shadowhunters. It makes me laugh so much when he's like, I don't want your stupid little magic pencils or your stupid little glowing stones. He's like so like condescending, I don't know if that's the word, but so like belittling of their whole like practices and culture. And it's so funny to me. I'm just like, I don't know, Kit cracks me up so much. And I'm just like, yeah, make fun of those bitches, they deserve it. These stupid fucking people with their weird little magic pencils waving around, like. Anyway, that was cracking me up. Okay, so moving on to Queen of Air and Darkness.